She pointed at my daughter and yelled, "Take the kid too, he's refusing orders!" Before I could even shut my truck door, two men in dark uniforms stepped closer, hands near their belts, acting like they owned the street. My daughter grabbed my arm, shaking, and that's when I saw the fake badges. Cheap metal, wrong seal. Karen stood behind them with a smile, holding a clipboard like a weapon, saying my house was under HOA seizure. I told her calmly, "You're standing on my land." But she laughed and said land doesn't matter when rules say otherwise. One of the fake cops reached for my daughter's backpack, saying she wasn't allowed to stay here anymore. That moment burned. Neighbors started recording. Karen leaned in and whispered, "You should have obeyed from day one." I stepped forward, slow, controlled, eyes locked on her, and said the line I never planned to say out loud again. "Back away from my child." "Now!" The fake cop smirked. Karen nodded like a queen giving an order. And that's when I realized she had no idea who she was testing, or how badly this was about to end. The taller fake cop laughed and said, "Sir, you're resisting," like he was reading from a bad script. Karen crossed her arms and told the neighbors, "This is what happens when people think rules don't apply to them." I gently pulled my daughter behind me and told her to call her mom, then stop. I took the phone myself and dialed a number I hoped I'd never use again. Karen saw that and snapped, "You're not allowed to make calls during enforcement." One of the fake cops tried to grab my wrist. I didn't hit him. I didn't shout. I just twisted his arm enough to make him drop the act and gasp. That's when Karen screamed, "Assault! Arrest him now!" A tow truck rolled in at the same time like it was planned. They hooked my truck while my daughter cried, asking why they were taking her dad's car. Karen smiled at her and said, "Bad choices have consequences." That smile did something to me. I looked around and noticed cameras on houses, phones shaking in people's hands, and one neighbor slowly backing away, like he finally understood this went too far. The fake cop hissed, "You messed up, man," and I quietly replied, "No, you did." I checked my watch, stepped back, and said a sentence Karen didn't expect to hear. "You might want to leave. Before the real uniforms show up." Karen rolled her eyes and clapped slowly. "Real uniforms, please. I run this block," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The fake cops shifted, nervous now, but still playing tough. One of them whispered to the other, and I caught the words, "Finish it." That's when Karen pulled a folded paper from her clipboard and slapped it on my chest, saying my home was temporarily seized, and my daughter would be placed under community supervision. My daughter started crying harder. That was the breaking point. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small worn card. Not flashy, not loud. I didn't show it to Karen, I showed it to the fake cops. Their faces changed instantly. One took a step back. The other swallowed hard. Karen noticed and snapped, "Why are you hesitating?" I leaned in and said calm as ice, "Because they finally know I don't bluff." From across the street I heard sirens, real ones. Karen's smile faded for the first time. The tow truck driver froze, hook still attached. One fake cop muttered, "We weren't told about this." I looked straight at Karen and dropped the line that made the air go dead quiet. "You just involved my family in something federal." The sirens got louder, and Karen started talking fast, saying, "They're late, but they'll back us up." She waved at the fake cops like they were her shield. When the real police cars stopped, the street went silent. Two officers stepped out, eyes already scanning everything. Karen rushed to them, pointing at me, shouting that I attacked officers and kidnapped my own child. One cop looked at the fake badges, then at me, then at my daughter holding my jacket like she might disappear if she let go. I said nothing. I just handed the officer my phone. The video was already playing. Clear faces, clear voices, Karen giving orders, fake cops threatening my child. The officer's jaw tightened. He turned to the fake cops and asked for their IDs. They froze. One tried to run. He didn't get far. Karen stepped back slowly, shaking her head, whispering, "This isn't how it was supposed to go." Another police car pulled in, then another. A man in a different uniform stepped out and walked straight to me. He looked at my daughter, then at me, and nodded once. Karen saw that nod and her face went pale. I finally spoke again, quiet but sharp. "I told you to step away from my child," Karen started shouting, that the videos were edited, that everyone here knew she was in charge. The officer ignored her and asked the man in the different uniform who he was. He showed his badge slowly, not for show, just enough. Karen leaned forward to see it, then froze. Her hands started shaking. She said she never approved any tow, never hired fake cops, never touched my daughter. The tow driver raised his hands and said, "She paid cash." She said it was HOA business. One of the real officers asked me quietly what my background was. I answered short. "Retired Navy, Special Operations." He nodded like that explained everything. Karen heard that and laughed nervously, saying it didn't matter, that rules were rules. The officer turned to her and said, "You don't have an HOA here." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then the twist hit harder. The man in the different uniform said my last name out loud and added, "This property is protected under federal ownership transfer." Karen backed away, whispering, "That's not possible." I looked down at my daughter and said softly, "Remember when I told you this house keeps us safe?" Karen suddenly tried to walk off like nothing happened. An officer stopped her and said, "Ma'am, you're not going anywhere." She started crying, saying she was just enforcing community standards. I looked at her one last time and said the line people would remember. "You tried to steal my child to feel powerful." Karen dropped her clipboard, like it burned her hand, and said she felt sick, that this was all a misunderstanding. The officer didn't move. He asked her to turn around. She refused at first, saying she had meetings, saying people depended on her. Then the cuffs came out. My daughter squeezed my fingers when she heard the click. One of the neighbors gasped. Someone whispered, "She's done." As Karen was being walked to the car, she suddenly pointed at me and shouted, "He's lying about everything." That's when another twist landed. One of the officers said, "Ma'am, we already checked." He held up a tablet showing property records, old complaints, and videos from other streets. Different families, same threats, same fake notices. Karen's face collapsed. She wasn't just cruel. She was busy. The fake cops sat on the curb now, heads down. One of them said they thought it was just a scare job. The officer replied, "You threatened a child." That ended the talk. I lifted my daughter into my arms for the first time since this started. She asked if we were safe. I kissed her forehead and said, "We were safe the whole time." As Karen was pushed into the car, she looked at me through the window, angry and small at the same time. I leaned close enough for her to hear and said the line that sealed it. "Power ends the moment lies meet truth." The street stayed quiet after the cars pulled away, like everyone was afraid to breathe again. Officers stayed behind, talking to neighbors, asking questions, collecting phones. One of them returned my truck keys and said the tow company was already suspended. I thanked him, but my eyes stayed on my daughter. She was still holding my shirt like the ground might move again. A neighbor walked up slowly and said he was sorry for not stepping in before. I nodded. No anger left for anyone except one person, and she was gone. Another officer asked if I wanted to press full charges. I looked at my daughter and said yes. All of them. He didn't ask why. Then one last twist showed up. A city official arrived, breathless, saying Karen had been using a fake HOA name tied to an old dissolved group. She'd been collecting fines, cash only, for years. The officer looked at me and said, "You stopping her today probably saved more families than you know." My daughter finally relaxed and asked if we could go inside now. I smiled for the first time and said yes. As we walked to the door, I felt every eye on us, not with fear anymore, but respect. I stopped, turned back once, and said a line that felt heavier than any badge. "This is why I fought, so my child never has to." That night, I tucked my daughter into bed while police lights faded from the street outside. She asked if the bad lady would come back. I told her no. Not here, not ever. She fell asleep holding my hand like she used to when she was younger. I sat there longer than needed, listening to the house, feeling how quiet safety really sounds. The next morning, a news van parked outside. They called it a fake HOA ring and said charges were heavy. I didn't watch. I made breakfast instead. Later, a folded flag sat on my table, one I hadn't touched in years. I realized something then. The fight never really ends. It just changes shape. Before school, my daughter looked at our house and said, "They can't tell us to leave, right?" I smiled and answered with the truth, simple and clear. No one can take what you stand up for. As I watched her walk away, safe and free, one thought stayed with me. Some people wear power like a costume. Others carry it quietly, waiting for the moment it's needed. And if anyone ever forgets that again, this land remembers who it belongs to. Karen pointed at my daughter and screamed, "Take the kid too." Two men in fake uniforms stepped forward, pretending they had authority over my own driveway. I stayed calm, hiding my Navy SEAL ID in my pocket. She slapped a fake HOA notice on my door, claiming my house was seized. The fake cops reached for my daughter's backpack. I warned them, back away from my child. That's when the real sirens hit. Karen's face fell as real officers arrived, badges out, reviewing video evidence from neighbors' phones showing her threats and lies. I revealed my identity as a retired Navy SEAL and showed property records proving the house was federally protected. Karen tried to deny everything, but the evidence stacked too high. She was arrested for impersonating authority and threatening a child. My daughter hugged me tight. Outside, neighbors whispered how we'd saved the street from years of fake HOA terror. I looked at her and said, "No one can take what you stand up for." That day, power met truth, and truth won.